Hello everybody, my name is Nairi and this is Fly Little Birds, and I'm adoptive mother of 2 boys, and I was also a foster carer. So today I'm going to talk to you what it's like to wait for adoption and why there are so many times, when you have to wait in the adoption process, which means you've got to be a very patient person. Several years sometimes before sometimes actually you decide to go for adoption. So in my experience it was many years we'd been thinking about it, and I think we'd actually approached an agency before and said, you know, we're thinking of it, and our children were too young at the time. We did have 5 young children, so it could be that you've been thinking about it for so long and then actually you take the moment to pick up the phone and move forward with it. So even when you decide that you want to move forward, you may feel that actually your home's not right, that perhaps there isn't enough space available, or you need to make a bedroom available, and because you haven't needed to do that, you know, now you've got to get your house tidy and get things in order, or that your finances aren't quite right. One of you might have to give up work for a while, so therefore your finances aren't in order. So practically then, so mentally you might be ready because all these years you've been thinking about it, but then practically when it comes down to it, you realise you have to make changes to be able to be ready to move forward. The third way in which you might wait, and I found this quite common when I've been dealing with people, because I've been doing the channel for a few years now, is that one partner is definitely more for it than the other, and one partner is trying to persuade the husband or wife or the partner to want to do it more. Now my advice around that, from my personal experience, is don't move forward until that other person is very much on board with you. I mean, there's always maybe going to be one of you that's a little bit more kind of positive about it, but I definitely wouldn't try and move forward until you're both pretty, certain about it. The fourth waiting game might be also because you're not sure whether to go down the foster to adopt route or the traditional adoption route. And the basic difference is you kind of train and become experienced as foster carers, and then you are given children that are more likely to be coming up for adoption later, so that the children only have one move. The trouble with this, of course, is that the courts can then decide for the child to go back, so it's not for everyone, but it's a very different route, and so you might grapple with kind of how you're gonna think about going forward with that. Within that as well, the age of child you really want, because foster to adopt traditionally tends to be younger children. So then say you've resolved all these issues, we're on number 5 now, I have to keep reminding myself by looking at my paper. You've resolved all these issues, but actually you're not sure whether to go for a voluntary agency, private agency, the council, local authority, whatever you want to call it, or in your country, whatever you call it. You may think, well, okay, I've got options here, and all these agencies and possibilities are there, and so you need to sift through and look at what they offer, how you're going to be working with them, because agencies work in very different ways and have different expectations. Also, you may find that you kind of click with one, but then it doesn't, when you're on the phone with them, it doesn't quite work out. So as you can see, before we've even really got anywhere, there's lots and lots of waiting, which is why adoption needs a huge amount of resilience and patience. I say this on a lot of my videos, and we're coming now to number 6. So number 6 is, once you get cracking, so you've decided on the agency, you're going to have all your paperwork and checks, the early stages done. Now, there can be delays in this. Now, in our country, this paperwork and checks and references is supposed to be done by a certain time scale. So there's a limit on that. So it's supposed to be 2 months, but where you are could be different. But that doesn't mean to say there aren't inevitable delays. So say, for example, one of your referees is not willing to be a referee, or they can't locate your referee, or you have a change of heart on that, then you've got to start again with the reference process. Say you have a medical and the doctor raises with the agency previous depression or previous illness, and the social workers want to talk to you about that. So again, it's not going to mean that it can't happen, but it could mean another delay. Finding suitable times for the assessment. So once you get past all this, then they're going to come in and assess you, and you're going to do what you might call a home study. They're going to come in for the assessments, and you've got to be available for that. Now, if you're working and you're both working different times, if there's 2 of you, you've got to make yourself available from work, and the social worker is going to come round and spend 2 hours, 3 hours with you each time. So again, trying to work out those assessment times between you, each other and the social worker, to make sure you can fit all of the areas in that they're going to go through. Trying to make yourself available for that can mean a waiting time. So then you've done all that, you've jumped through all the hoops, you've got your checks done, and you've had your assessments done, and you've found time to do the training. which will have to happen. There'll have to be a training. There'll have to be time for you to do your paperwork in response to some of that training. And once you've done all that, and you've done all the formal kind of side of the assessment process, then dates need to be found for you to go through your formal adoption approval. Now, in our country, those are called panels. So we have 2 panels, one to be approved as an adopter and one to match you with a child. Where you are, it might be completely different. However, you will still need to wait until those dates are tied in. So when the agency next has their availability to put you forward, so that a social worker is going to be with you, when you have your next availability, if it's things are tied up and there's like several months in advance because things are booked up, then you have to wait. You have to wait for those dates to come through. So there's another waiting time, and that's getting more difficult because that's a waiting time you can do absolutely nothing about, because it's down to processes and people having availability to do what they need to do. So you feel kind of anxious because you're not yet approved, and you're waiting for that to happen. We were on number 8. So we're on number 9. It's quite challenging for me, isn't it? Okay, number 9's the biggie. Number 9 is finding the right child, and this could be a huge waiting time. If you're very specific about the type of child and age you want, you're likely to wait longer. It could be that you think that you found the right child, but then your social worker or the child's social worker doesn't agree, or there's lots of competition for that child, so that's another problem. It could be that you went for foster to adopt and you had a young child with you, but in the end the young child went back to birth family, or the courts decided differently, and so you've got to start looking for that child all over again. So waiting for the right child could be anywhere between, say, 3 months, which would be really, really good, to, dare I say it, 3 years. I mean, that would be very unusual, of course. The average is probably about 12 months, 9 to 12 months. That's the most challenging time when you've done everything required of you. You desperately want to have a child, and you are now trying to sift through the minefield of trying to find that right child. Yes, you'll have support from your social worker, but this is a very challenging waiting time for adopters. Also super difficult. You find the right child, you're moving forward, I think you can be matched, and it can still get to this point where things are contested. So a relative comes out of the woodwork that wasn't expected and challenges the fact of the adoption going through. Now, in my experience, it's very, very unusual for things to be turned over at this point, because it's not really likely that a family member would have put things in place and got things right to be able to have that child back. But it has to go through court. The birth family need to have their chance to prove evidence that they've changed, that they could then have their child back. So there's a time frame involved in that, and sometimes that can be quite a long time frame, and very, very, very worrying for the potential adopter, very soul destroying for them after kind of being selected to go through with this child. So then, of course, you've got through all that, and then you're waiting to work through dates as to when the handover, the introductions with the child, and that process of actually receiving the child into your home. And it might be that the foster carer's not able to do it at a certain time, or the child's social worker is not able to be there, say they're on holiday or something, and you might have another wait for that to be put in place. And then the final wait, number 12, is going through the introductions and patiently building up the time with the child until they finally come into your home. And that can seem, strangely, even though it might only be, say, 2-3 weeks, like the longest wait ever to actually have the child in your home. It feels like the longest wait ever. So as you can see, if you want to move forward with adoption, and those of you who are adopters will be able to kind of identify with this, you will have waiting times which will be very challenging. So that's something to bear in mind before you go through with the process. That level of resilience needs to be there. If you've gone through any of this, pop it in the comments for me. Let me know if you've experienced any of this. I will see you on Fly Little Birds. I will link a playlist for you of interest at the end, and subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.